Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars. You're watching another one of my YouTube guitar building videos. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I hope that by the end of this video, I'll have earned the honor and privilege of your subscription. In the last video that I posted where I was talking about the construction of the 6-string multi-scale fan fret guitar, I had sprayed the body with about 10 coats of Crystal Lac Brightone instrument finish. Now in the videos that preceded that, I had applied Z-epoxy finishing resin. And my initial plan was I was going to apply the resin, that would fill the grain, and then what I could do is build up the thickness of the Z-epoxy, let that dry and cure, then I would level sand, polish sand, and buff it to a high gloss shine. It'd be an incredibly simple finish to apply. However, I decided after doing some tests that the Z-epoxy doesn't yield the sort of shine that I was hoping for. I'm pretty particular when it comes to mirror-like high gloss shines on a guitar, and it just wasn't achieving the level of quality that I wanted. So I decided instead I would take a step back and rely on a product that I have used for years and years and years and have come to enjoy as far as the quality of its shine, and that is Crystal Lac Brightone instrument finish. I've used it for years and years, and I know how it will perform when I level sand, polish sand, and buff it up to a high gloss shine. It's going to give me perfect shine, perfect reflection, no distortions, and it's just going to look really great. Of course, it requires a careful approach to level sanding, polish sanding, and buffing it to achieve the level that I expect. And I'll be sharing that with you in a future video when it gets to that stage. Right now, it's only been a week since I applied the Brightone, so I want to let it sit for another week so that it will fully cure. It's still not fully cured yet, so it needs that extra week, I think, to reach that point. But in doing that video last week, I've had a couple of comments and questions from viewers who wanted to know a little bit more about the Brightone, why I use that, and how it relates to other products I've used in the past. And one viewer asked specifically, is Brightone the most durable choice? Which is an interesting question. And I think that I can answer that by comparing it to other types of similar finishes. Brightone is a 1K polyurethane, a water-based polyurethane. Now, I made the transition over to water-based almost 2 decades ago. I used to use nitrocellulose. I've even used polyester. But those products, well, for one thing, nitrocellulose doesn't have the quality that I feel is necessary in the modern era. Most of your younger guitar players don't like the idea of a finish that turns yellow or starts to crack and check and chip and that sort of thing. The older players like it because it gives it a vintage look, but the younger players aren't so thrilled with it. So there's a quality control issue. The polyesters, while they are the most durable, are much more difficult to apply, and it's pretty tricky. So, and it requires expensive equipment. As a result, it's a process that I tend to shy away from. So I've been using the water-based products primarily because the science and the technology has advanced so rapidly in the last couple of decades that we're at a point now where the water-based polyurethanes, the water-based acrylics are really performing really well. And we can use those on guitars and feel relatively confident that we're going to get a great finish that's going to be durable and it's going to last a long time, and it's never going to shift in its color or check or crack or anything like that. However, with 1K polyurethanes, there is an issue with durability. Even with a high solids content like Brightone has, in the end, it's not as durable as a polyester resin. In fact, really there's nothing as durable as a polyester resin. However, the water-based polyurethanes are a little easier to apply. There aren't as many fumes. You don't have to have special equipment. So, and the toxicity issue is not there. That's why I like the water-based polyurethanes. Now there are 2K polyurethanes, and those have been around for a lot of years. And in the beginning, most of your 2K polyurethanes were solvent-based. So you had the issue of flammability, toxicity, and that sort of thing. With the water-based 2K polyurethanes, which have been out on the market now for about 10 to 15 years, their quality and their technology has advanced to the point where they are amazing products to use. When you spray your 2K polyurethanes, they will dry in about 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and then they will cure in just hours. So you can apply all your coats in one day, and then the next day level sand, polish sand, and buff it out to a high gloss shine, and you're done. You don't have to let it sit for weeks or even months. Now, in the case of the 1K polyurethane, I have found with Bright Tone in particular, you have to let it cure for about 2 weeks before you can start to level sand, polish sand, and buff. Now, you can factor that into your production schedule if that's the sort of thing you're doing. But if you're in a hurry, that's not the best way to go. Now, the nice thing about the 2K polyurethanes, including the water-based ones, which I have used quite a bit, they are extremely durable. Far more durable than the 1K polyurethanes. They are incredibly scratch resistant, almost approaching polyester. Not quite, but close. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of guitar manufacturers are using the 2K polyurethanes to finish their guitars, whether they're using water-based or solvent-based. However, there is a very significant drawback to using the 2K polyurethanes, and that is the hardener that you have to mix into it. Think of the 2K polyurethanes as almost working like an epoxy. You have two components. You have the main resin that you're going to apply, but then you mix into it a hardener. And once the two are mixed together, you have roughly 4 to 5 hours of shelf life or pot life. And once you spray it down, it's going to rapidly dry and cure. And that hardener is going to make it much, much more durable. The problem is those hardeners contain what are known as isocyanates. Isocyanates are highly toxic to humans. Specifically, what they can do is they can trigger respiratory issues. And those respiratory issues can be serious and life-threatening. As a result, a lot of the manufacturers who make the 2K polyurethanes recommend that you wear a full-face respirator, a full-faced fresh air respirator. And a fresh air respirator is a respirator that supplies fresh air. It's pumped into the mask from a pump that is located outside of the environment that you're working in. So it's bringing in fresh air and supplying it to you to breathe. This is so that you won't be breathing any air that contains the isocyanate. Now, the isocyanates are so toxic that even just smelling the fumes of it before spraying it is dangerous. And repeated and constant exposure will lead to some sort of respiratory issues. And for some folks, it's much more of a possibility than it is for others, because everybody's different, and how they are affected by exposure can differ from one person to the next. But it is almost guaranteed that if you are exposed to the isocyanates on a regular basis, you're going to have an issue with it. Now, I've done some research in the past about isocyanates and how to protect myself, because I really got interested in using the 2K polyurethanes. What I found, and trust me, I am not an expert on isocyanates. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I can't speak to that level. But what I can say is, from what I've understood in speaking to people who are experts on isocyanates, is that the key is to wear the proper PPE to protect yourself from those isocyanate fumes. And like I said, most of the manufacturers recommend the fresh air respirators. But in talking with other companies that manufacture respirators, it's clear to me that as long as you're using a high quality respirator fitted to your face and changing the filters on a regular basis, you should be fine. You shouldn't have any issues. Now, I would say that if you're using the 2K polyurethanes on a daily basis, it's worthwhile to invest in a fresh air respirator. But if you're only going to be using it once in a blue moon, you know, maybe once or twice or 3 times a year, as long as you have a good quality fitted respirator and you change the filters every time you go to spray, you should be okay. I just spoke to some people at 3M who make their respirators, and they told me that they recommend using a fresh air respirator. And the reason for that is because a lot of the people who are working out there in the field and applying products with isocyanates aren't changing the filters frequently enough. And as a result, they're running the risk of exposure due to the fact that once a filter is past its prime, it's not doing any job filtering out the isocyanates. They're still getting in. And if you can smell those fumes, you're breathing in the isocyanates and you're running the risk of exposure and potential respiratory damage. For that reason, I sort of stepped back away from using the 2K polyurethanes. And I'm hoping that science and technology is going to make some advances in those areas where the isocyanates aren't going to be as dangerous. What's interesting is a lot of the products that we use or that we are surrounded by on a daily basis contain isocyanates. However, exposure to isocyanates becomes dangerous when it's in a vapor form, like when you're spraying. So it's not really an issue when you're handling something that has an isocyanate in it. So, but again, I'm not an expert on this, so don't quote me on this and don't base your decisions on what I say. Use what I'm saying as a way to do some research to understand what the risks are and whether or not you're willing to expose yourself to those products. In the end, I will continue to use Crystal Lac Bright Tone, and I'm still using Solarez. I can't believe it's not lacquer. And I work with the company on a regular basis to try to help improve and develop the products further. And there are some other products out there that are kind of interesting. At any rate, I hope you found this video to be useful. As always, give it a thumbs up. Click the subscribe button, visit eguitarplants.com or the Highline Guitars merch store. Links in the description below. Any support that you show on those websites is going to help support this channel so that I can keep making videos on building guitars. So hopefully in the next episode, I'll get to the level sanding, polish sanding, and buffing out this guitar body so that I can proceed on with this build and get it done and then move on to the next project. At any rate, I hope you'll be back for future guitar building videos.